Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Dark Souls with Lucian. We just got out of the Undead Asylum, and we're moving on towards the Undead Burg. There's a lot of places you can go from Firelink, but we're not going to do any of them just yet. First, we're going to level up. You level up at bonfires, and to level up, you simply spend souls to increase one of your stats. Every time you increase a stat, it's a new level. Levels aren't really relevant for much except multiplayer. What is relevant is the stats you increase. I'm going to be going on a slightly tankier build for this walkthrough, just for the sake of a walkthrough. But typically I would increase strength or dexterity depending on what damage stat I was going for, and endurance to let myself hit more. Let's talk about the stats for a bit. Vitality is health, essentially. You increase this, you increase your HP. You'll also notice, over the side... where's my mouse? There it is. You'll also notice that it increases resistances to physical and magical attacks. If we increase attunement, also increases your resistances, but if you look over here it also increases your attunement slots. Your attunement slots allow you to equip different spells. I start with one because I'm a knight, which is actually handy. The more attunement slots you have, the more spells you can equip. It's that simple. Excuse me. Something stuck in my throat. Endurance. Endurance does a few things actually. It increases your resistances and your stamina and your equipment load. Resistance is pretty straightforward. Stamina is, we've talked about, it's the number of hits you can, how many hits you can dish out before you need to wait, how many rolls you can do, etc. Equip load is something entirely that we haven't talked about yet. That was weird English. The more equip load you have, the more you can equip before you become heavily encumbered. So I've got 50 at the moment. If I increased this to, say, 53, it might get to a point where I could wear my heavy armour without running around slowly. Like if I back out of here, there we go. If we look at me wearing my heavy armour now, my roll is very, very slow. Fat roll, we call it. I run slower, I walk slower, I have a slower roll. I'm just slower in general. Now let's take off my armour. Faster roll, faster sprint, faster run. That's due to my equip load. So, if you look here, 4.2, that's the weight of the item. So if I equip that and say that, now I've got a mid-roll. It's not quite a fat roll, and it's not quite a speed roll, it's a mid-roll. And you'll notice that I run somewhere in the middle of them. Now if I equip the rest of my armour, you'll see we go right up to the fat roll. So increasing your equip load lets you equip more stuff before you hit that fat roll. If we look here, you'll see I've got 31 out of 50, that's what, about 70%-ish? If we get that down to about 50%, I'll hit a mid-roll. I think beneath something like 25, it's the quick roll. So yeah. Let's have a look at the rest of these stats. We've had a look at these three, now let's look at the damage stats of the game. First one's strength. This is pretty straightforward. As you'll notice, it also increases your resistances. I think every stat in the game does that, so yeah. Strength is, yeah, it's really straightforward. It increases strength-based weapons. So if your weapon has strength scaling, for example, this, if we look here, it's got C rank strength scaling, which means that, it gains a certain amount of extra damage for, depending on how much strength you have. It also gains a certain amount of extra damage depending on how much dexterity I have. This one has D rank scaling, so if I smacked someone with my shield, it would do less extra damage than my sword would, depending on my strength. The scaling goes from E to S, and each rank gives you more damage per point of the stat. Dexterity is much the same as strength, except for skill-based weapons rather than, brute force ones. Resistance, that's really quite straightforward, it increases your resistances. Now we've got intelligence and faith. These are the two magic stats in the game. We'll be using a little bit of faith in this build, just for the sake of showing you how spells work. Faith works for miracles, which are healing, and some few offensive miracles, which are quite fun to throw around. Intelligence is for sorcery, which is pure offense, almost pure offense. A few utility spells, but mostly just mana nuking. Finally, you'll see at the bottom there's a humanity counter. Yeah, that's the stats. We're going to, actually, you know what, I'm tanky enough to start with. We're going to increase my... How do I want to do this? Do I want to go tankier? Do I want to go... Actually, let's increase my endurance. I want to get my speed roll back. Okay. Did that get me to my mid-roll? Not quite. We'll get there. Around Firelink, there's quite a few things you can grab, but first things first, we're going to go down here. And we're going to take off my armor, because it's not helping me right now. That's the Firekeeper for Firelink. We're going to come back and sort of interact with her a little bit later on. First things first, we're going to go down here. We got the Master Key, we started with it, so there are a few things we can grab that most other characters won't be able to, except for the Thief, who starts with the Master Key by default. Quite ugly, isn't my character? Oh well, whatever. Nice chest though. Okay, so we get down here, and let's just send the elevator back up. Because we're not going to be going up alive, I don't think. Quite a few things down here that we can grab. That's a soul of a nameless soldier. It's a consumable that you use to gain extra souls. Quite nice. I think it gains about 400. A bunch of little enemies down here you can kill. They don't really yield much. Oops. Lock on, please. What are you doing? What? Okay, there we go. Lock on's a little bit dodgy. So they only give you like 20 souls apiece. They're not that helpful. Down here is Griggs of Vinheim. He's a sorcery vendor, an early game sorcery vendor. We don't need him, so we're going to leave him alone. There's a bunch of stuff in this section, however, that we can grab. First things first is the Estoc. Very, very good early game thrusting weapon. Beneficial for a shield tanking build. I don't think I have the dexterity to wield this. No, I don't. It's got mostly dexterity scaling though, so we won't be using it in this build. In this build I'm going to go with strength scaling. Very powerful thrusting weapon, high crit chance for those riposts we saw earlier. And let's see if I can get a backstab on this guy to show you what that does. Come on, over here. Yeah. Nope, come on. He's in the corner. Let's get him out of it. Ooh, that was trippy. Okay, that's a backstab. Get round behind someone, stab them in the back. Just a light attack will do. Transient curses. Those aren't helpful for us right this second. I'll talk about them later. We are going to go over here now. Actually, let's talk about the transient curses now anyway. In this area there are ghosts. You can't hurt them. Normally you need to be cursed to do it, or use a transient curse, one of those things I just picked up. There's one now. I'm going to ignore him. I can't kill them at this level anyway, they're just too tough for me. I'm just going to run across this bridge quickly. It's very thin, so be aware of that. I'm probably going to die here. Oh my god, the ghosts are in my way. Yeah, I'm going to die, that's fine. I wasn't getting out of this alive anyway. What I just picked up there was a Firekeeper soul. Firekeeper souls can be given to the Firekeeper beneath Firelink, or any of the other Firekeepers in the game, to increase the power of your Estus Flask. That one is one that you can get at the very start of the game, and it gives you a really nice early buff. You die for it, but that's okay. Usually I wouldn't become human before doing all this, that was just a waste of humanity. But that's okay. She can't speak to us, but she can reinforce our Estus Flask by giving her that Firekeeper soul. So now you'll notice in the bottom here that my Estus Flask is +1. That means that it will heal more when I use it. Very, very helpful. Good to have in the early game. Now, we've got a couple more things to grab down here, so I'm going to go down and do it. Because I'm running a night build, I'm going to have a little bit extra faith than I normally would, so the item I'm going to get in a moment is going to be quite helpful. If you're not playing a knight, that gives you the little bit extra faith than you would normally have at the start of the game, or a cleric for that matter, you probably don't want to come and get this next set of weapons that we're getting. If you notice off in the distance there, you can see at the very top of my screen, you can see the green tinge of my bloodstain. That's just going to sit there until I die again. Now I'm not going to go back and get it. Your bloodstain has all of the liquid humanity you had on your body, and any of the souls that you had on you. Okay, so there's the master key that we use, that we started with. That opens us up into the Valley of Drakes. A lot of stuff we can access here. Not much of it is useful right now. Right now, English. That leads into Blighttown. We're going to leave that the hell alone. Down here, something we can grab that's rather handy. You'll also notice we picked up another soul back, a consumable soul back there that we can use for currency. Hello, undead dragon. We're not going to fight this guy, but he's probably going to kill us. What he's guarding, though, is a couple of really useful items. So I'm just going to dart in here, grab these, cool, and get horribly murdered by his ridiculous claw attack. Oh my gosh, I might live, I might live, I might live. I lived! Wow. I think that's the first time I've ever lived through that. A little bit more health than I'm used to having coming down here. What did we get? We got two things. The first one is a Stora's Straight Sword. Very powerful early game weapon. Doesn't scale very well into the late game, but you notice it requires 14 faith to use. We start with 11 as a knight. I think the cleric can use it straight away. Very, very powerful. Very, very powerful early game weapon. Its main strength, though, is when we go down later into the catacombs, where it can kill the skeletons and not let the necromancers revive them. More on that later. Anywho, very good early game weapon if you're running a cleric or knight, because you've got the faith to use it. If not, go for the S-stock, or even just the broadsword is quite strong. Anywho, the other thing we got is the Dragon Crest Shield, which we're going to equip now. It's quite a strong early game shield, mostly because it has not only 100 physical damage reduction, which is 100%, but it also has pretty good stats for elemental reduction, and while it's not got as much stability as the Tower Kite shield, it does have much better fire resist. So actually, it's not that much better than the Tower Kite shield, but for characters other than the knight, it's very helpful. What we will use it for is one specific fight later in the game. Not too much later, but later, which will help us out a lot. Anywho, I might actually just, I'll just equip it for the sake of vanity, because it looks awesome. And it weighs exactly the same as the Tower Kite shield. So let's run back this way. I've got no souls, it's actually just quicker for me to do this than go all the way up again. So you can, survive getting away from the dragon's clutches, but it's not essential, because I just died then again anyway. Anywho, we're back at Firelink Shrine. Let's use these souls that we picked up, see if we can get an extra level up, and then we'll go into the Burg. I think I'm going to get at least one level up out of this. Wow, I might actually get two. Level up. See, if I'd been smart, I would have given myself another point of faith so I could use that, so I could use Stora's Straight Sword immediately and show you how OP it is, but not quite smart enough today. A couple more things to look at around here. First one is a couple of items that we can pick up around here. Firebombs. Not incredibly useful, but better to have than not have. They're essentially a consumable grenade that you can throw. There's also this chap here.
Hello there. I believe we are not acquainted.
I'm just going to skip through his, he's Petrus of Thorland. I'm just going to skip through his dialogue. He gives you a copper coin, which you can get rid of later.
Very well.
He'll also ask you to join his covenant, and he will sell you miracles. The covenant isn't super important, you can get out of that later if you want to, and it doesn't really affect gameplay unless you're in co-op, which it just helps. But he also sells these miracles, which for us are going to be helpful because we're running a faith build. You can see healing, homeward, takes you back to your last bonfire, very helpful, we're going to get that pretty soon in actually. Force knocks things back, more helpful than it sounds actually, it'll be helpful in the catacombs later. Seek guidance is terrible, and then there's just a healing spell. He also sells a talisman and a Thorland talisman. These are used to cast miracles, and we'll want one of those too. He gives you a gesture, which is just neat to have, and you can talk to him a bit, but we're not going to. Finally, we can go up here and grab some more stuff. Another soul here. Not a big one, but useful. And we can duck down into here. For some extra loot. First up, 6 Homeward Bones. They do the same thing as the Homeward spell. They take you back to the last bonfire you rested at, except they're consumable, so you've got limited uses. Morningstar and a Talisman. Talisman's nice, means we don't have to buy one. Morningstar is a pretty strong strength weapon, but it's got a pretty terrible moveset, to be honest. It's just this repeated swing. If it hits enemy, it doesn't have that ridiculous overswing. It's quite quick, but that's all it does. Its heavy attack is that much more pronounced swing, and if I two-hand it, same thing, just two-handed. Yeah. Yeah, so you've got light, heavy attacks. If we equip my broadsword... Oops, nope, wrong one. You'll notice that the broadsword combo swings together like that. Most swords do, axes and maces don't. Spears, just like thrusting weapons and spears, just have a repeated attack that they do. But swords specifically, like straight swords and curved swords, have comboed attacks together that you can use to deal quite considerable damage to a target. Then you've got heavy attacks. These can also be comboed together, although they take a lot more stamina and deal more damage. You've got attacks coming out of a roll, a kick, oops, let's see if we can get this right. No, that's the parry. Kick, there we go. Done by pressing forwards and the light attack together. It's kind of challenging to get, I don't get it all the time, like at all. There we go. Then you've got, let's see if we can get this right, a jump attack, heavy attack and forwards at the same time, and finally you can backstep and then do that. Backstepping is just a tap on the roll button when you're not pressing in a direction. I think that also has invincibility frames, although I've never really tested it. Okay, finally, Lloyd's Talismans. Those are only good for multiplayer, as are the cracked red eye orbs that you noticed me pick up earlier. We're going to ignore the heck out of the graveyard. There's a few things that are useful in there, but nothing specifically for this build. Some people will tell you to go in there and get the Zweihander, because it's pretty much the best strength weapon in the game. If you're going to be running a strength build, you may as well. I'll be grabbing it a bit later to show you where it is. So if you want, you can wait for that part of the Let's Play and then get it then. Just another soul there. Just drop down here. Oh! Okay, bail. I am not ready to fight that thing yet. Sitting at the bonfire not only restores all of your equipment and, well, not equipment, your equipment still degrades over time, but it not only restores your health and Estus flasks, it also resets all enemy respawns. So yeah, trade-off. This chap is for lore only, and he's kind of an arse to fight, so we're going to wait until a bit later before we kill him. We will be killing him though, because he's got, you know, useful things. I'm actually going to chuck my armor on. Don't like looking like beef jerky. There we go. And the armor does look so completely awesome. Kill a few guys here. We're heading on towards the Undead Burg now. I'm probably... You know, we've actually rattled around Firelink enough. I think we'll end the episode here, with that chap in the background throwing firebombs at us. And we'll, see you next time. That was the wrong gesture. See you next time on the way to the Undead Burg. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye!